Antiquity Unveiled, the most marvelous revelations of the 19th century concerning the origin of Christianity. Jonathan Manning Roberts. Hegesippus, a Greek theologian. My best greetings to you. There's only a fragment of my mortal life now extant. I traveled through almost all the countries at the time accessible. My life was an eventful one. I am set down in history as a converted Jew, when in fact I was not a Jew at all. I was a Greek and lived in Athens. As I traveled all over those countries, I found the idea of some God saving people who was to be born into mortal life are, in fact, as the speaker said today, a reincarnation of some older God, are gods who would effect this. And upon this tradition, the Christians have interpolated the small fragments extant now of the works of my mortal life. In reality, it was nothing more than the teachings of the pupils or disciples of the Alexandrian school, going out and spreading this idea, which they received from India through Apollonius. And even if we talk about a real Paul, who was a contemporary and copying some of the ideas, since when has Christianity been Pauline in reality? Some of the fundamentalist groups, but they're few and far in between the actual fundamentalists that are trying to restore Pauline doctrine. This I positively know to be the fact, because I talked with them and was initiated in some of their secrets myself. But I found that a great deal of it was lost, and while they had some sound moral and philosophical thoughts, they had only one object in view as the basis of their teachings, and that was to gain power. At the time I lived, in 170 of the Common Era, there was a great desire to gather together these traditions and to gain possession of ancient manuscripts in order to patch up a new religion out of the old ones. At that time, it was a fight between the power of learned scholars and the power of pagan priests. The priests bitterly opposed those who were regarded as learned men. My name was Hegesippus. You will find me mentioned, if anywhere, in Tickendorf's writings. He was one of the best scholars in New Testament matters among modern authors. Yeah, so, here's my message, but here's somewhere to look it up, which is probably where the medium looked it up, right? The alleged medium. Refer to McClintock's and Strong's Ecclesiastical Cyclopedia and Nouvelle Biographie Générale for account of Hegesippus. Such are the meager biographical accounts of Hegesippus, which may be found in the references, that there is hardly a trace of truth in what has come down to us regarding him seems very certain. That he was not a Jew, his name clearly indicates it being evidently Greek. He tells us he was not a Jew, but a Greek. That he traveled over all the countries then accessible to him. That everywhere he found the theological idea of some God saving the people that was to be born into mortal life, or the reincarnation of some older God who would effect this. That in his writings he mentioned this fact, and that this was the ground for Eusebius interpolating the above edited forgery in reference to him and his work. Now, I have found, at one point I found and had a list of 24 figures that they didn't consider themselves gods or incarnation, sons of God, or anything, which would be part God, or anything like that. but over time they were perceived as the incarnation of God or something like that. But they themselves never claimed that. Further than this, he tells us that this theological idea was especially promulgated by the Alexandrian followers of Apollonius in accordance with the Indian theology brought from India by Apollonius. The Spirit tells us that he knows this to be so from the fact that he had conversed with him about it and was himself initiated in some of their secrets. Even at the early day, the Spirit tells us that a great deal of the teachings of Apollonius was lost, and their only object seems to be to gain power. The Spirit also tells us that in 170 of the Common Era, when he lived, there was a great desire to gain possessions of ancient manuscripts in order to patch up a new religion out of the old religions. There's actually evidence that around the first pope, they were literally working out their, rather than it being received by tradition theology, the Didache was made, but they obviously were in a editing period of the New Testament, and there were other church doctrines and stuff they were working out and piecing together, and they were aware that other groups had believed these things before. There is little doubt that Hegesippus was one who attempted that very thing, and that his work, designated by Eusebius, Memorials of the History of the Church, was a compilation of those ancient manuscripts, most prominent among which was the Hindu manuscripts brought by Apollonius from India. Now, we can refer to Hindu as a race. Hindi is the Arabic term for the race of people. It was never a term for the religion until the British decided, let's call it the Hindu religion. There's way too many religions going on here. Okay, fine, Jains, we'll consider you a separate religion. And the Buddhists, okay, we'll consider you a separate religion. There's still like 70,000 different groups probably still extant there. On the Hindu manuscript of Apollonius from India. The reference of the Spirit to Tischendorf's writings as the most likely place to find mention of him is not the least significant feature of his communication, as it indicates that spirits are fully apprised of what was going on here on earth after their departure to the spirit life, that the work of Hegesippus, quoted by Eusebius, was not preserved after it was used by Eusebius to suit himself, shows that the fraudulent writer and forger of Christian evidence could not afford to have it come down to us, as it would, beyond all question, have put an end to the fraud he labored so hard to perpetuate. And it will be remembered that Apollonius, in his communication given weeks before, stated the fact that Hegesippus had copied his version of the Hindu Gospels and epistles into the Samaritan tongue, from which copy of Hegesippus Ulfilas, bishop of the Goths, had translated the Codex Argenteus. We regard this communication as genuine and authentic, and highly important as cumulative evidence of the fact that Apollonius, and not Jesus, is the real object of Christian worship. And yet, this Greek heathen has been made a saint by the Roman Catholic Church. I've learned that saint is usually a good title that's been put upon people, but it doesn't indicate terribly strongly that there is all that much good in such characters. But so we have the next one, Ulfilas, yeah.